Hello, everyone. I want to welcome those of you who are already here. Thank you so much for coming to the very first event of the Nevada Democracy Project, which you will be hearing more about shortly. We've still got folks in the parking lot trying to find spots and making their way in the door and signing in. So we're going to give those folks a few minutes to come on in the room, and then we will get started shortly. So thank you for your patience.
Well, good evening. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Mayor Mazur. I'm the president of Vegas PBS, and it is so great to be back at the West Las Vegas Library Theater. Thank you again for your hospitality. John, I just want to introduce my compadre, John Ralston, the CEO of the Nevada Indy, and tell you a little bit about what we're doing. This is a joint partnership where our goal is to listen to what's happening in neighborhoods, report and report back. You know, the fundamentals of democracy is certainly about conversation, but I think a core fundamental is also listening. And tonight, that's exactly what we're here to do.
Mayor's right, and thanks for saying that. This is about you tonight. It's not about us. You know, we in the media sometimes make it about us. I'm sure some of you think that. This is about you. This is about showing you that we are here to listen to this community. We want you to be as candid as you possibly can. This is a groundbreaking project, the Nevada Democracy Project. This is not. We're not going to be here and then disappear. What's going to be more important, I think, what happens after tonight, after we hear from these folks, and we can follow up. And I just want to say real quickly, Mayor, that we are already validated here tonight because we have two legends of West Las Vegas here. Billy McCurdy and Gene Collins are here. I covered them when I had a lot more hair. And talk to them back then. And so the fact that they would show up at a community event like this means a lot to us. So Mayor and I are going to get off the stage. I want to turn it over to your two hosts for tonight, Amber Renee Dixon of Vegas PBS and Nyoka Foreman of the Indy. Thanks.
Thank you, John and Mayor, and thank you to everyone that showed up tonight. My name is Nyoka Foreman, and we're here to listen and learn from all of you. We want to know about the issues that you think aren't being reported on enough, or the ones that you're worried that elected officials aren't paying enough attention to. We want to know what's keeping you up at night. What are the topics that you discuss with your friends, your family, your neighbors? So this is an open forum. We encourage and invite all of you to weigh in on this conversation.
Yes, please do. And a couple housekeeping notes before we begin. If you do want to talk, please raise your hand and either, let's see, where is Elizabeth? Okay, Elizabeth back here, or Maria will come to you with the microphone. If you're in the middle of the aisle, try to work your way to the end and we will find you.
And we want to hear from as many people as we can tonight. So get your full thoughts out, but just be mindful that other people may want to speak. And Elizabeth and Maria will hold the mics. Please do not try to take them. This is just how we continue to keep the conversation rolling.
Right, and we hope that there are a lot of passionate conversations tonight, but we also want to keep it respectful. So please be respectful of other people's opinions and refrain from using curse words, please.
We also want to remind everyone that this is being recorded and portions of the conversation will be used for future news coverage. It will also be available in full online on both of our organizations' websites.
And so I think it's time to get things rolling. Does anyone have anything they want to start off with? Or else, Nyoka, you want to feel out the crowd a bit?
Sure. I want to know how many people live or own a business in the area that made it out tonight. Raise your hand if you live in 89106, 89108, 89030, 89032.
Counting
Okay.
4 or 5 hands.
Okay. Did anyone, maybe those people can start the conversation tonight. Do you feel comfortable?
We'd love to hear from you. What your concerns are as business owners in this community.
Or residents?
Someone raise their hand? Okay.
All right, we have a starter.
Yay.
And tell us your name, give us a little bit of your background, and what you do. Or not what you do, you don't have to share that, but a little bit of your background.
You want to stand up, sir? Okay, so start with your name, please, so everyone knows.
Billy McCurdy.
Billy McCurdy. Billy McCurdy, how long have you lived in this community?
Since 1952.
Wow. I think a round of applause just for that. Okay, Mr. McCurdy, what's on your mind? You get to go first.
What's on my mind is revitalization of West Las Vegas. That has been on my mind since the 1960s, after we had issues when we had riots and our Jackson Street was kind of demolished, and also our Owens Avenue, where we had all our businesses, where we have never recovered from that. And we have gotten a lot of promises from white politicians especially that they're going to help revitalize West Las Vegas. And when it got elected, they have forgot even the ones who I represented as being a political consulting firm as our own McCurdy & McCurdy Media Group.
So what do you think needs to be done, said, to change this problem that has been a problem for all these decades? I mean, this event tonight is part of that effort, but as someone who's lived in this community all these years, what's not being done right now that should be happening?
Well, there's a lot of good things that are happening right now in this community, such as Mario's Market just got through opening up after a piece of legislation that was introduced in June of 2019.
Tell us a little bit about that. Tell us about Mario's.
Mario's is a very successful business in this community, which Mario used to live in Marble Manor. He was raised in Rose Garden, and his father used to work for the Las Vegas Housing Authority, where I was employed at one particular time. And so Mario has done a lot for this community, and I think that you and the media need to help make sure that we can get viable coverage and not negative coverage about our community. I also think that sometimes the media have kind of helped destroy some of West Las Vegas or historic West Las Vegas because of negative stories. When we have positive things happen in this community, we don't get the coverage that we need to get. And I'm very happy to see PBS and John Ralston and Nevada Independent coming into our community and doing something positive in our community and not just hitting on the negative things. We've had good legislators from this area to come and represent. They've introduced bills, but they weren't successful in getting their colleagues to support their bills. And I know a lot of times when studies was done about economic revitalization, or when money came from the federal government, West Las Vegas was always used for the numbers to get the federal money, but the money was somehow went in other areas of the city of Las Vegas. So I'm very happy to see that the partnership between the city and the county in West Las Vegas is kind of moving our city and our community forward. And I'm just hoping that we can get some more areas on Jackson Street and D Street with brick and mortar buildings. And we need more housing in West Las Vegas. In order for us to have a viable community, we have to have infrastructure of housing, because no business can make it without having housing in its area to survive.
Thank you. Do either of the moderators want to ask any follow-up questions?
And I just wanted to add, if we can get the mic real quick, that Nyoka, you've actually been out in the community leading up to this event. What are you hearing from our business owners in the historic West Side?
Business owners are concerned that businesses aren't opened on the West Side. They see it as a place that's very transient. People drive through it all the time, and they're wondering, why aren't the doors being opened off of Jackson or Jefferson? So that's been some of the concerns. Also, gentrification, bringing in houses and updating the area. How will that affect the cost of housing in the area? When I went to the West Side to report on the new housing development that will be on Jefferson, some of the residents were concerned because they say, we live in the area, we pay $600 in rent. If you bring in a unit or a development that's going to charge people $1,100, then that doesn't really help them out when it comes to housing in the area.
I was wondering what you think of the 100 plan and its progress. Do we hear a big sigh in the crowd there?
I'm not allowed to give you the mic, sir. There we go. Yeah, tell us. Thank you. That's a great question. Is everyone in the room familiar with this project? Maybe we want to characterize it a little bit for those who are not.
Raise your hand if you've heard of the 100 Plan.
Okay, about less than half the room.
The 100 Plan is a redevelopment plan that is organized or managed by the City of Las Vegas, their redevelopment agency, and it seeks to update and redevelop the historic West Side. I think Mr. Billy McCurdy is going to share some thoughts on it.
Tell us, how's it going?
Well, let's go back from the 100 Plan. When Oscar Goodman was mayor, we had what we call the 2000 Planning Board, which I served on, the City of Las Vegas 2000 Plan when Oscar became mayor. That plan dealt with the whole entire complexity of the City of Las Vegas. But during the time when Lawrence Weekly and Ricky Barlow were city council people, they had the opportunity to start trying to develop a revitalization plan for West Las Vegas. I attended a lot of charrettes that was held at Fish Street School, which I used to go to Fish Street School. And so therefore, when I went to those charrettes, they came up with the members from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. And they also came and tried to develop a plan which a lot of people in West Las Vegas given their input into that plan. The plan is a good plan, but the plan needs to be implemented, and it needs to be fully implemented with all the resources that we can receive from the federal government and for community investment partners. I have learned that nothing will happen without partnerships and partnering. The whole economic problem in West Las Vegas, we have not borrowing power. We do not have the power to borrow from lending institutions because the lending institutions still consider this a red line area. And not only being a red light area, they fix it where we cannot get the adequate insurance that we need to be able to survive in this community. I still live in the community, which I used to live at 212 Huntley Road in 89129. So I'm very much in favor of just not implementing programs to get things done in the community. This community is entitled to every source of services, everything that other parts of Las Vegas has, because I've been all over the whole county, the whole area, and so I got a very good familiar part in what's going on. It's just like the new casino they're talking about building. That project would be a good project if the owner realized where he is. This is not where the Stratosphere is, and I thought about Stratosphere being in the neighborhood, and some people are afraid to put a big casino that size on the property that is located on. I'm for revitalization and putting a hotel there, but not that big of a project. And I've told the owners himself that that's too big of a project to be put in our community.
Okay, sir, thank you so much for your perspective on the many issues that were raised.
Yeah, that's the kind of discussions that happen when you talk about redeveloping the historic West Side. A lot of people may be on board. Some people are a little bit apprehensive.
All right, we have another question here. Gentlemen, please state your first and last name for us.
I'm Gene Carlin. I'm like Billy, I grew up here myself, and this community was my pet peeve. I had the job when I was an assemblyman to bring jobs and businesses into this community. So I travel around the country to see how other cities did their inner cities, and my job was to bring that information back, and then we was going to implement some of those ideas here. So one of the hardest jobs that I've ever had to do was plan with no money. You see, that's very difficult for me to sit down with a plan, and then we don't have any money. Now, you mentioned that 100-year plan. I'm along with McCurdy, Mr. McCurdy. I sit in on a lot of those meetings as well. The problem is, like my daughter says, that 100 plan keep changing. You see, and then what happens that we has been stigmatized by the press. First and foremost, I'm so glad John and you all are here. I've known John when our hair was different colors. See, and one of the things I've always admired about him, because in spite of what happened, he never quits. I mean, he always fighting some issue. We haven't always been on the same side, but we've always kept in touch and we've always talked. And some of the things that we need in this community, let me go back to what we do not need. We don't need negative press. And let me tell you why. All of the businesses that you see in this community right now is because myself and other people stood up with the police and fought the bad elements in this community so that people's like the business people wanted to come into this community. And you go in business to make money. You don't go in business to lose money. So we don't have the luxury of some of you all. If you run into a problem, you move elsewhere. We don't have that luxury. If we have a problem in this community, we have to stay here and fix the problem. So we fought the bad elements. And the reason why you can come in this community, you see all the businesses that's going on down there, it's because myself and other people in this community chose to stay here and fight because we could not go anyplace else. And that's the reason why that so many businesses are popping up in this community, because we put our lives on the line to deal with the gang members. And so what we would like for you all to do is to ask us what are the issues, instead of you taking your helm and run with it. And let me say this, and I'm going to say it. I was with the sheriff, now he's the governor, and we was on a show, and we were talking about human relations and community relationships. And one of the things that we talked about, we had here was weed and seed. Now, we did all the weeding, but when it came time for the seeding, there wasn't any money. But we always ran to the press, and the press says, oh, West Las Vegas, the crime is so bad in West Las Vegas. Then they put up a red line. Then they told developers, don't come in here because it's so bad. And let me sit here and tell you this. West Las Vegas has always had the lowest area in Clark County for crime. Now, if you want to know where I got my numbers from, I got them from Metro.
And you know what? You bring up something very important. Thank you so much. I love it. Stay right here with me, because during Mario's grand opening, which is just right up the street, the sheriff mentioned this West Las Vegas, historic West Las Vegas, is the safest place in Las Vegas. A lot of the people that I spoke to on camera and off camera said the exact same thing, that they commended Metro for being out there, the police officers who were out there.
Well, they are one of the few who said it, because everyone else said how bad it was. And I live here like McCurdy. I grew up here. I represented. I'm a former state assemblyman. I'm a former president of the NAACP. I'm a former president of Reverend Al Sharp's National Actway. I'm a member of the Churches of Southern Nevada. This can go on. I had a credit union. See, all of these things that we had in this community. Now let me say this. There's not one black business on Jackson Street. So now, why is when we grew up, we had all of those things, so all of a sudden now, we don't have those things, and it's because our area was not represented the way that it should have. And I still live in this community. I grew up here along with McCurdy, and we still live in this community. I'm continuing to fight for the betterment of this community. And once again, I want to thank you all for coming over here, and I hope you hear something that will make you go back and say that we have done this community, we have done them a bad blow, and we are going to change the dynamics of this community moving forward.
And before I let you go, because I know Amber and Nyoka have some questions, follow-up questions as well, your advice for a future generation. We talk about, again, I see a lot of young faces here. What advice do you have for them when it comes to making sure that this beautiful community continues to thrive?
I was in Silicon Valley once, a few years ago, and some person came up to me and says, Mr. Collins, if you had one gift to give to young people, what would that gift be? And I thought he said, no, it's not a trick question. I'm serious about this. I said, if I had one gift to give to young people, it would be the gift of exposure.
Round of applause. That deserves a round of applause.
Okay, yeah, we have a follow-up question.
Okay, follow-up question.
You said that this area was a pet peeve for you when you were in the assembly. Can you describe what you meant by that?
Well, the jobs and businesses that we tried to bring into this community. See, the 100-year plan came after. See, we had a credit union in this, which I was the president. We had Nevada Power, we had Centel, we had Southwest Gas, we had the Silver State. All of those individuals bought into the idea. See, we had the incubator. The incubator was the first thing that I brought in. You know what the incubator does? It hires within the community, and so that's the reason why that I went across this country to see. I went to Marietta, Georgia. I went to North Carolina. I went to the Port of Oakland. So what I'm saying is we wanted to see how other cities did their infrastructure. And I was going to bring that information back to Las Vegas so that we could rebuild our community and we could hire people who look like me. And we could have opportunities from business who look like me to come into this community. So that's what I meant by that was my pet peeve, because I went across this country and even passed legislature, which was the incubator. I passed legislature to make sure that that happened. So it's not because we didn't try to change the dynamics of this community. We was fought by powers to be. And that's the reason why that we don't have one black business on Jackson Street, not because we were not capable, not because we didn't try. It was the power that be along with the press.
And what were you fighting? You said you were fighting the powers that be. What was it that you were fighting for? Was it for capital?
No. We had the money. We was fighting the politics of this community. We had the money. And I don't have time to tell you, but it was very simple. See, the incubator there was some guy back in Maine, I think, passed a bill. 10% of the defense money was set aside for blacks and minorities. That's where the money was going to come from. There was no fiscal responsibility to the taxpayer. We live in one of the best areas in Clark County. We are surrounded by Nellis Air Force Base, Indian Springs, Nevada Test Site, Area 51, Tonopah Test Range. Every dime that was appropriated for all those different areas was set aside for blacks and minorities. That's where we was going to get the money from to build the incubator. That's where we were going to get the money from to help black businessmen and women go into business. And there was no fiscal responsibility whatsoever because the money has already been appropriated. 10% is set aside, already appropriated. So we were fighting powers to be.
We're lucky to continue to have you fighting for us. Thank you so much. Elizabeth, you do have someone over there.
Yes, we do, and he has been very patient. Your name, sir?
Doc Walls.
All right, Doc, what do you have to say?
First of all, I haven't been here as long as Mr. McCurdy or Mr. Collins, and I really appreciate all that they have given to the city of Las Vegas. They really have given their blood, sweat, and tears. So now it's time for others to come in and assist them in doing what they're doing. The 100 plan was probably phenomenal when it was first conceived. But the problem is that time has gone on and left the 100 plan behind. Like Mr. Collins said, they didn't implement it. Like Mr. McCurdy said, the capital wasn't there to build the businesses in this community. So now it's time to look at Las Vegas and figure out what's next for the historic West Side and the other underdeveloped areas within the city of Las Vegas. In fact, I've been here 13 years, and I recognize that Las Vegas is certainly a great place for gaming, dining, and entertainment, but there has to be much more to Las Vegas than that. We were shown that with the pandemic. When the pandemic shut everything down, the total economy shut down, and many of those people who are currently homeless are homeless because they lost their jobs and they didn't know where to go. So now they're still trying to find their way. Everybody that's homeless is not on drugs. Everybody that's homeless is not good for nothing. Many of those people are people whose loved ones, the wage earning in the family, fell off the cliff or died during COVID. And now that they've lifted the moratorium, they're evicting 125 people every single day. So our homelessness problem is growing here in Las Vegas. Additionally, it's time to transition Las Vegas from just an international gaming city into a world-class city. And if you bear with me, and I'll explain to you what that means. That means we need a financial district, which would be well-suited right here in the historic West Side. We need a museum of science and industry. We need a museum of natural history. We need art museums free to the public. We need to make certain that we're inviting transnational corporations to come into Las Vegas and build and produce right here in urban areas. But when they come, we have to require that they engage in linked development. That means they need to partner with business people here in this community and with the community itself to ensure that we're able to build businesses so that when people, tourists, come to the historic West Side or wherever those gyms are, that they're able to shop in the community and leave money in the community. But the most important thing that we have to do is we have to begin to care about each other. We have a burgeoning gang problem here in Las Vegas. There was a young man who was shot yesterday while trick-or-treating, a football star. And that breaks my heart to see that because it's a senseless murder that can be prevented if we are open-minded and recognize that things are changing. Hundreds of thousands of people have moved into Las Vegas recently, and many of them bring a history with them. Some of them have children who haven't quite learned how to get along with other children. So they settle those issues not by sitting down at the table and talking about their differences, but they're pulling guns on one another. So we have to begin to address that problem. We can't ignore it. We can't act like that doesn't exist. Additionally, we have to better our relationship with the police because, as Mr. Collins indicated, in the past, it was the police and the community that stood together to get rid of those persons who were ill-willed. So we can't sit at home. This auditorium should be filled. Everybody who's concerned should be here. But, you know, some people have lives, they have jobs, and their lives are interrupted. So it's our responsibility to carry that message out to them, those that weren't here, and let them know that this is what happened at this meeting and these were the kinds of things that we discussed. So at the end of the day, if we all commit ourselves to making Las Vegas that city that is the pinnacle when it comes to ideology, when we make Las Vegas the world's epicenter for technology development, when we make Las Vegas a city that's concerned about the constituents and not about Formula One, where they tie up the traffic to everybody's dismay, when we start forcing the school system to pay the teachers everything that they deserve, then Las Vegas has potential. So we still have a long way to go, but now is the time because the focus is on Las Vegas.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. I think we've got someone right over here who's ready to speak.
Before we get to this wonderful lady here, ladies, would you like to add anything, any follow-up questions?
For anyone who may get up and talk, I'm still curious about what Mr. McCurdy said, the power to borrow, and what is impeding your ability to borrow money to start businesses or to buy homes. You mentioned redlining, and I'm interested to hear more about how that relates modern day to your ability to borrow, if anybody will talk about that. But let's hear from you next, unless you have another follow-up question.
I don't. I think he had a very well-rounded response. Thanks for that. We can move forward.
Wonderful. Give us your first and last name.
My first name is Sheila, and my last name is Collins.
Go ahead, Sheila. Tell us, what are you concerned about in this community, and would you like to see change?
Well, I wanted to piggyback off something that Mr. Collins said, which is my father and Billy McCurdy. I was thinking a couple of days ago, and I remember my father being passionate and on this initiative when I was a little girl, and I would come in and I would, he would bring us to the meetings, the community meetings, and the concern was always the historical West Las Vegas. And now I'm a full-grown woman, and we still having these discussions, which really concerns me because it's really simple. If you look around this entire valley, the valley is redeveloped. What concerns me, because when it comes to the historic West Side and African Americans are Black, this is in my opinion, I'm going to speak for me. I'm made to feel like we're some project that no one gets, and we're human. It's just simple, and we just need something Mr. Collins stated earlier when he was talking about. The interference, and this is something that I witnessed myself when bringing projects over to the historic West Las Vegas. And that has something to do with the powers that be. Now, I'm going to be real simple, so I'm not going to name them tonight because I'm going to be nice. But the powers to be that created all of this resistance and not moving this community forward. And I'm curious to know that the information that is received tonight, how is it going to, everything that is being disclosed and talked about, how is it going to change or implement change what hasn't already occurred?
We'll go ahead and let Amber Nyoka respond.
Okay, I just want to restate the goal of tonight is to listen to the community. So we want to hear about all of the concerns that are on people's minds. I think the 100 plan is definitely one that folks are thinking about, but we're also here to listen to if you have concerns about racism. We mentioned redlining and how do those things come into play. So I think it's more so making sure that you're heard, making sure that you're engaged, not saying that this community isn't already engaged, but making sure that your voices are amplified. So exposure.
And you just said something. It took me a long time. Born and raised here. I was born and raised in the historical West Las Vegas community, and I moved out, and I came back, and I really came back with the intent to be a voice, and because I saw so much stagnation in the community not moving forward, and I was in a different position where I can provide a kind of semi-level of influence to kind of, be a part of the community and moving it forward. But you said something, and I pondered this a long time. Someone asked me this, and I was thinking like, well, no. And he asked me, I was working with the federal government at this particular time, and he said, Sheila, I don't know why he picked me, but he said, is Las Vegas racist? And I said, okay, let me think about this before I really say it. And so I was nice. I said, it's an individual, people have individual experiences, but I had to come to terms with that historic West Las Vegas community. I really came to these terms. And racism played a major, major play in that community not being redeveloped. And I thought about it, really. It took everything in me to be like, this is not the reality. But in my adult life and understanding the journey and the timeline, watching my father, watching so many other people, community leaders who are no longer here, who have addressed the concerns, I have seen the 100 plan about 10 times. And as my father stated, it has been changed. Before COVID, I sat on the Historic Preservation Board for a temporary time. And one of the planners, we were talking about the historic West Las Vegas, and he mentioned to me, he said, Sheila, he showed me some plans, the last plans that I actually visibly saw. And he said, Sheila, this is what we're going to do. And I looked at that, and it was like a little town center. And I was like, oh, my God, this is really nice. I believe that the community will like this. Now, I'm not a spokesperson for the community because the community, it makes up many voices. But when I looked at it and understanding, the community, I was like, I believe the community is going to really like this. This is really good. Now, we have this big old casino at play, which the community really don't want it. And I witnessed my father battle with, I'm not going to name them, different governmental entities. And the bottom line is racism. I'm finished.
Thank you, Sheila. If the moderators would actually allow me, I want to answer a question that Sheila asked of us, which is what is going to happen next, what is going to come of all of this listening that is happening in this room tonight. So as the editor-in-chief of the Nevada Independent, and I also speak, I know, on behalf of everyone at Vegas PBS who cares very much about the people in this room and the community, we intend to report what was said tonight. You will see stories on our website. You will see mentions in our newsletters. I believe that Amber intends to do follow-up on her show, Nevada Week, on Vegas PBS, probably more than once. We will probably stay and speak to some of you after this event tonight, if you're willing to do so. And we will come back into this community to ask you whether anything has happened as a result of this reporting. And it's our hope that by amplifying your voices and what was said tonight, including your frustrations over decades, that people who are in a position to do something about it will then be listening. And that really is what the Nevada Democracy Project is all about.
Right. We simply listen, we held this event, and several people have said to us, the 100 plan has not happened. It isn't going forward. Why? And we ask that of elected officials, and we start there, and then we continue to find out who's voting on what to prevent any progress. But I am interested, do other people agree with Sheila when we're talking about the powers that be that are preventing the advancement of the West Side? Is that because of racism? Is that what you think the root cause is? Or
before we move on, I do want to just describe what redlining is, since it was mentioned. Redlining is a form of systematic racism. And what it does is it economically oppresses a community. It has historically oppressed black communities across the nation. And so what happens is a bank would not loan to some of these communities because they see it as a higher risk. So that is where the redlining comes in.
All right. There's also the historical definition of it, of certain areas where people of color were not allowed to buy homes, correct? But then you're saying that translated into a new form of redlining.
Well, no, redlining it was something that the banks did. They did not loan to black communities, or they seen them as more of a risk.
And Mr. McCurdy implied that it's continuing today.
Absolutely.
It is. It has side effects. So that can be neighborhood shrinkage, which is what we see in West Las Vegas and Windsor Park. You see accumulation of empty lots. You see street maintenance that isn't happening. All of that is a form of redlining.
And before we get, is that something you would like to comment on? Okay, I do have several people around me who do want to comment. I'll start with you. Give us your first and last name. Go ahead and stand up, and I'll get you next, okay?
Thank you. Okay, thank you. My name is Chandra Summers Armstrong. I'm the Assembly Representative for this area, and I think I'd like to get a little bit more in depth into the redlining for folks who may not know. Redlining was actually, I just try not to get too emotional here. It was actually a practice that was authorized by the federal government. The Federal Housing Administration co-signed redlining. They were in cahoots with realtors and with others to get this done. We were not even able to have GIs who came back from the war were not even allowed to use the GI Bill in certain areas. So it wasn't like something that happened by accident. It was purposeful and it was intentional. And Ms. Foreman is absolutely right. It has had decades of effect on our communities. There's a gentleman who is with the Black Mountain Institute. He wrote a book about this. Somebody help me, I can't think of his name off the top of my head. No. How much is your land or something? I can't think of his name. It'll come to me in a minute. I'll tell you about it. And he talked about how you could look at two houses in a house in the same neighborhood that were divided by a street, and they could be built by the same builder, and the redlining would cause tens of thousands of dollars in difference in value from one community to another just because of this imaginary red line that was drawn around communities. And when we talk about redlining, we know that in America, your home is the most value that most Americans have. You use that money, you leverage it, send your children to college. You use that money, you leverage it to buy a better home or to buy a car and often to pay off debt. Whatever you use it for, that's your retirement. And when communities are redlined, they are devalued on purpose. What we see in historic West Las Vegas, the way these houses are built, that's no different from what was very common practice in the 50s. Cinder block homes are effective. They were built all across the West. And in other neighborhoods in California, these homes have intrinsic value. If you saw a house like this in Palm Springs or something, they would have value and you would be protecting these communities. Here, we look at them as nothing and that they should be torn down, and we are devaluing what is really what all people have as the value in their homes. And so redlining is brutal. It is brutality, and it is racism, and there's no other way to explain it.
And Assemblywoman, we would love for you to stay. I'm sure a lot of our wonderful constituents here would love to talk to you after the fact. Thank you so much for being here, young man. I know you have...
One thing, Maria.
Go ahead.
Assemblywoman, I wonder what you believe is behind the advancement of the 100 plan, why it hasn't gone forward.
I think saying that it's not 100, it's 100 plan. I don't agree with the overall statement that it hasn't gone forward. I think that it has gone forward in a manner that the present council person has decided is its best way to move forward, and have taken portions of this plan and moved them forward in the best, he's not here to defend himself, so I'm not going to, criticize. He can defend himself, and he can defend what he's done with the plan. I also participated, and here's the thing. Whoever is in that office has the authority to reach out to the community and move projects along the best way they can. We see this in every single municipality and in every area of this city. Very rarely do we see community members in other communities dig deep into these kinds of issues, because those places are already developed, right? And if another community has a development that community doesn't like, they do exactly what we do here. That is, we have community meetings, we talk about it, we state our case, and then it's up to the person who is the city council person or commissioner to determine whether or not they want to move forward. And so this is what has happened here. So the 100 plan included things like what we are seeing, the redevelopment of Jackson Street. That's in the 100 plan. The 100 plan includes a African American museum. This 100 Plan in Action puts that someplace in a different than what the original plan had it laid out, but that doesn't mean it's not going forward. It just may be different than what people had imagined in the original document. And so I think that, you know, it's always fair to allow a person to come and defend and to talk about what they're doing to the best of their ability, and then we work it out as a community. That's the best that we can do.
Do you think racism is at play here?
In this community?
In when people say they don't think the powers that be are getting the 100 Plan to move forward?
That's a difficult thing for me to answer definitively. I can only tell you that every issue that we see in this community has a genesis. And the genesis of the historic West Las Vegas community, that was from A Street to J, I think, originally, somebody help me, was based in racism. It was based in Jim Crow. Black people were forced to live here for generations, and they were forced to live here in conditions that we could equate to Soweto, South Africa. In the 50s, when the strip was hopping and bopping and money was being made left and right, black people could work there but not live there. I don't know what you call that except racism. So, you know, the fallout is what you see. And so if we're going to pretend like racism doesn't have anything to do with what we see here, we're deceiving ourselves. And it wasn't accidental. The people who made the rules and applied the rules knew exactly what the fallout would be from that. And we see that right here now in our community. We see retraction and disinvestment and people that come here and buy cheap and then try to place things in our community that have absolutely no respect for the history and the culture here. And I haven't lived here all my life. I'm a Californian by birth, but my people drove from Arkansas in 1939 from Arkansas to California, and they were running away from the many things that we see here in this community. And I've worked here and lived here and loved this city and this community for 24 years. I've had my feet planted here, and I've worked in this community, and I've fought very hard to be participatory and to support and to be a help. And it is hard. It is always difficult to get anything done here. Anything.
Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. Young man. And I know we have a lot of hands up here. Elizabeth, do you have anybody? Okay, I know we have a line here. This is wonderful. This is what this event is about. Go ahead.
Okay. Good evening. My name's Quentin. My name's Quentin Savoy. I'm the current president of the Las Vegas NAACP. Really grateful that this forum is being held. I think the most urgent and important thing that we should all be talking about is democracy. Our democracy is in a very fragile state right now, and not taking away any of the most urgent issues that we hear about from our community members. At our branch, we get stories of infractions from law enforcement who have treated our community members poorly. We hear about families who are being evicted at a most expeditious rate. Nevada has the fastest eviction rate in the country, if you don't know that. We can put folks out in 5 days without the tenant ever going to court, ever. We don't have affordable child care. Health care is out of reach for a lot of folks. So there's a lot of things that are falling apart in our system that makes people in my generation and younger not believe that democracy is working. I have conversations with grown friends of mine that tell me they don't see how democracy is working for them. And I have to say, well, hey, how'd you drive here today? You drove on a street, right? Like, that's the byproduct of a healthy democracy. People being able to tangibly see how this system that we purport to believe in, that we are all empowering our elected leaders to be a part of, but we don't make it work for us in ways that are tangible. That's the most important thing that's happening in our community and in our country right now. Because if we continue to foster a system where people don't see the tangible outputs that enhance their day-to-day lives, then misinformation seeps in, like we see, disinformation seeps in, and folks start considering other types of projects. None of this is guaranteed. My life changed on January 6th. because I realized that what I learned in school about this project truly being an experiment. And we have to be in agreement with one another about how that project proceeds. So if every 4 years or every 2 years we traipse out and ask people to vote for folks, and then we don't see the byproduct of that vote turning into anything, what do we expect the 21-year-old young black man to believe? Or the undocumented 23-year-old brown man to believe? They're not believing that democracy works. And I think that's all a system that we think works. And the best part about a democracy is that we can all be involved to enhance it, to nurture it. We haven't done the best job of teaching our young people how to nurture democracy. Instead, it's easier for them to go to a school district that is not functioning as best as it could, and I think that that's a very diplomatic way of putting it. And we allow them to drop out and go park cars at the Bellagio. We export our best talent to do the most menial things. But that really challenged the system in this state. So we have to be in a position where we can cultivate the talent that funds our state, but are also allowing young people to see that participating in this system works for them and will enhance their life. And therefore, we want to preserve that to enhance the lives that are coming. We talk a lot about being a pro-family country, but we have the most anti-family policies in the country. It doesn't make any sense that we have to fight about why people need paid time off or paid sick days or affordable child care. We have, I think there was an article from 2022, I don't remember who, but we got $50 million in ARP funds to lower the criteria for families to get child care subsidies. But does anybody know who got any of that money? Raise your hand if you got child care subsidies. Okay, I see a person in the back who got a child care subsidy. And I'm not purporting to be everywhere all the time, but I still know that folks are having a hard time affording child care. So all this to say that for democracy to work, we need the systems that hold up our democracy to work so that people can see how it's beneficial to their lives.
All right, your final message to our youth, real quick. And you're a youth. You're representing your youth.
What do they tell us at CBC? They said, keep coming back. There was a story in the Bible about someone went somewhere. Forgive me, I'm a heathen. But he kept going back asking for freedom. Kept going back. And every time, no. And then one day, okay, here's your freedom. And the message that day was keep coming back. Dr. King kept coming back. Medgar Evers kept coming back. Senator Joe Neal kept coming back. She's still here. We still need her. All these folks that did not know they were making history, they kept coming back. Young people, keep coming back. Run for office. Be involved. Get engaged. We need you. That's it.
We definitely need you. Thank you so much.
Okay, I have a follow-up question for Quentin Savoy. So you mentioned democracy. That's on your mind. Maybe you can give a little bit of guidance on how soon should reporters start reporting on elections or candidates? Are we doing it too far out? Maybe you have some details to share.
That's a really great question. In my day job where I work, we track and recruit candidates, and we have this big to-do about election night. And election night used to be where you would vote and you know the election results that night. But in this system where we have vote by mail in multiple states, it's important as a community that we promote a complete and accurate count. Gone, I think, are the days of knowing who won on election night. With vote by mail, which I'm a fan of, because when you have more people voting, more voices being heard, that makes for a strong, healthy democracy. So as a community, the best thing you can walk away from here tonight and do for your democracy is reset the expectation about election results. Every 2 years we get picked on in Nevada nationally about why it's taking us so long. But we have an accurate and we have a complete system in this state. So tell your friends and tell your family, reset the expectation. We might not know that night, but let's just make it fun until we do know, because we want every single vote to count.
Thank you so much. And hopefully you'll stick around, because I'm sure a lot of people have questions for you as well. This gentleman has been very patient. Go ahead, give us your first and last name.
My name is Askia Talabdeen. I shouldn't have let this young man go before me. I'm Askia Talabdeen, Professor Talabdeen, PhD candidate Talabdeen, and formerly incarcerated Talabdeen. I teach a class at CSN for black boys about black boys taught by a black man, and there are no black males in the class. So I hear the city moving forward. I'm not from Vegas. I'm not from the West Side, but I love young black males, not excluding females. They're going to school. I don't know whose fault it is. I know the pros and cons of college. It's my background. But if we don't do something about these young males going to school, we're going to still have the gang problem. If we move forward with the jobs and all that and nothing for the kids, and they can't think, and the democracy starts in the classroom. We have to know that. It should. Then we're going to still have the gang problem. So I'm just here to advocate, get these young males in school. If anybody can get me in school just to show them how cool it is, call me anytime. You know, they need to see it. It's not, to me, school is not about getting a job. It's about learning how to really think. And I'm telling these young males, come in just like that, sagging, whichever way you show up, and engage in this thing and credentialize what we know, because we still lacking there. The data says it, you know, so I think that's still an issue, especially for these young kids. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And we do plan on making this part of the school curriculum, by the way. It's so important. Go ahead.
Okay, your name?
I'm Norma Tokumbo, and
You've lived in the community just for how long? Tell us.
It's been like 10 years. Okay. Yeah. So I don't live in this community, but I'm gonna say some statements before I give my question. I think what Mr. Collins said was very, very important. In this day and age, young people, we have the exposure that we need, and having civic engagement is very, very important. So I think, like everyone has voiced, the 100 plan keeps changing. So I want to know from those elected officials, if these people in the community do elect you into office, what are you going to do in the first 90 days? It can be minor, but what are you going to do to progress these things that keep changing? And while I do agree with you that we cannot attack people who are not here to speak for themselves, but if something was supposed to be in this community to drive more business, more engagement into this community, to give it more positive press, and it's moved elsewhere, then it was not done for this community. So I would like to know, if you guys stand behind officials and elect them, what will they do to progress this 100 plan that has not happened or that keeps changing? Because we need to bolster efforts as young people in the community to move our agendas forward, because just talking does not move anything forward. And that's where you guys have the power to vote these elected officials into office. So you have to bind together and make it work. So I want to know, if given that office as the mayor, what will you do to help this community to prove to them that you will actually move our interests forward?
Thank you for that. I do want to just mention that the 100 plan, it is an action. It has been incrementally implemented. So there are some developments that are underway, like the West Las Vegas Library, the redevelopment. But some people are worried that some of these developments are not within the historic West Side. So like the historic Legacy Park, which is on Martin Luther King, and also the redevelopment of this building, which will also be on Martin Luther King. But we can move forward.
We do have several questions. Go ahead. Give us your first and last name. I'll hold the mic. Come on over, right over here.
So I'm Senator Dina Neal. So I want to talk about a few points. And I'm so glad that Sheila brought up the question on how will the information be used, how will it be translated, because I think that's super important, right? When we have these conversations in this particular community, the information is used not for our benefit, right? It is used for a tagline and emotion and a moment in time that never actually translates to a real outcome for us, which has been stated, and it's a truth. And so I wanted to bring up the point where the question was being asked, do we really believe that racism exists? And I think if we're gonna have that conversation in a real way, and we're gonna talk about what the diversity that's in this room about and the collectiveness of what that means, then you're going to have to recognize that, number one, yes, racism exists. It's not a theory. It is an actual feeling that is expressed and internalized by the people who are subjected to it. And so I think that's super important. And I know that it exists in the West Las Vegas area and portions of the old parts of other parts of the city, because of what I experienced going through with Windsor Park. What's crazy is that when Black people mention the word Black,
and try to talk about Black issues for themselves in terms of capital, housing, and anything else, it is diluted, and then that word is then victimized, villainized, and we are made to feel as if using that actual word is a problem, and we are the ones at fault for speaking about our own ethnicity and our race. That is a real issue. And when we talk about capital coming into our community and we talk about the amount of money that we need, we are then told, but it should go to others, not just you. Although the historic and systemic need has been present, has been ignored, but when we ask for the money that we want, it is then diluted again to then say, but what about all of the other neighborhoods that might have a similar characteristic or issue? That's not the question. The issue is, what about the actual African American community that has suffered and is looking for investment, not to be used for someone else but for themselves, not to be marginalized and pushed out of their own community because the dollars came to their community, not to be placed in a grant application and the data about them to be used and then for somebody else's neighborhood. That is a common practice that happens in Vegas and in the state of Nevada, where they will come here, use 89106, 89030, 115, and they will literally take our poverty, our racial characteristics, plug it into a grant, get dollars, and those dollars do not find their way back to those zip codes. That is a fact. I have been in office since 2011. That was a fact when my dad was in the legislature, 32 years. It is a fact in 2023. This is not theory. This can be proven and established. Why we can prove it? Because we have 20, 30, 50 studies that establish this truth. And we don't need to break it out and show you to justify, oh, is that real? Is that a real statement that she made in that meeting? Yes. And I don't need to pull that document out to prove our statistics to say that it's a reality, because it is. You can find it with any research. And the other thing I wanted to bring up that you guys brought up was when you talked about, and I think Assemblywoman Armstrong talked about this, how and why is why can't we find a way when we talked about the powers that be without just mentioning the city, Las Vegas, North Las Vegas, whatever, right? Is because when we make these statements about these entities then seek to either villainize, harm, do things in order to try to figure out how to silence our voices because they feel that we are speaking or saying something about them that is untrue, yet it is a feeling that has value and it can be represented by fact and research. So when she says she doesn't want to get into the space of alleging something, it's because of this fear that has been placed within our grouping that if you speak against the entity, that somehow they are then, you are putting yourself against white versus black, which is not really the case. Because if PBS and Nevada Independent and the Democracy Project wants to really talk about the moving this group forward, then it's about the collective voice and collective effort and collective bodies who want to get behind the facts and lift that voice up and actually say, no, it's actually true. And you will stand with those black community members when they're villainized, when they are shadowed, when they're diluted, when they are told, oh, but that's not really true because we've tried and we've worked really, really hard to satisfy them. And we've worked really, really hard in order to make things right. But yet nobody has talked about who owns C Street. And nobody wants to talk about, when we talk about development in 89106, why the vacant lots have to be owned by the city and not those families. Why the churches seem to be, the story is, well, the churches are the problem. The way it looks is the problem. But really what the subtone is, it's the people that we don't want to actually lift up. And if you change the race of those people in 89106, then we would probably want to do that investment over there, but we're not interested in doing an investment where they happen to be black children. Because that's the truth. We want to change Marble Manor, but make it market rate, but get them black families out of there. That is a problem because we want to keep those black families, lift them out of poverty, not remove them from the zip code. So we are not on the same page, nor in the same mindset when we talk about our people, when we talk about race, when we talk about the impact, effect, and what we go through. Nobody wants to talk about urban planning. Nobody wants to talk about the racism in urban planning and who it is administered by in this city. And so I don't know what you're going to do with this information, but I have reached a point where I no longer have a give a damn. Because I have already done my battles for 13 years. And I'm at a space where if this information gets used in a negative way or in a way where it's the connotation of it reflects us in a negative light, it's going to be a problem with the Democracy Project. Because we're not interested in being recharacterized and redefined in a way other than what is being said in this room. And you have to be willing to extract emotion to hear the word and understand exactly what it is in the position that we're in and why we are in a constant state of distress, anger, and always pushing back on the narrative that is counter to our reality, because it is real daily and yearly. And so when we go to battle for our families, we mean it, because we feel their pain every day. We feel them not being able to go and have a roof over their head. If you would have been at our trunk or treat yesterday, you would have seen the many ranges of families where just the poverty, just walking through to get candy, that is us. But there's an entity and groups that don't seem to see that in the full color of what it is. It is a moment to experience and say, oh, I did something good for them. I gave them this 2-cent candy. Listen, it's bigger than that. If you care, then you care to bring up this entire community, and the dollar amount that's stated will not be diluted, and it will not be used for someone else. It'll be used for the word black and the people who are associated with it.
For our own education, can you give me an example of when the media has used a situation like this and then villainized you?
Really? Oh, I got at least 10 stories.
Sure.
Are we? Yeah, I don't know if we need to
maybe you can touch on, because it was mentioned earlier that people didn't want to be shown in a negative light, or
Correct.
There's a narrative. Maybe you can touch on a few.
Okay,
really
I'll just put it this way. It's appropriate to always do good journalism, right? Which you have to hear the other side of the story. But when they present the other side of the story, and then they say, "Oh, that's not true," I never get the counter of when the city will say, "Oh, well, that's not true," and then the resident can come with the document and the facts to then say, "No, that's absolutely what I said the first time is correct." It is never the full circle narrative on that story. It's just left with, "Oh, but the city disagreed." And there is never a full write-up about, well, now let's just pull out the document that says X. Because I literally just had that conversation with another journalist, and I was like, first of all, it's recorded and on video. So I don't need to counter anything if it's on video. You can find out for yourself that somebody is lying because it's on tape. Now, I don't know, I know current environment, there's like the media is all turned around because people are like, well, maybe if it's on tape, it's not true, but actually it is. So all I'm saying is that when you do a story and the residents say, I have proof that these things are occurring and they have the documents to establish it, do that follow-up after you talk to the entity. The entity wants to protect themselves, but the residents are always in a position of the defense. And then they're being used. And then they're being shut out. That's a problem. All I heard in this room was a series of emotions that have been going on for 30 years, just repeated by my elders. And I think you need to take note of that. If the 50-year-old is saying what the 80-year-old is saying, there must be some truth.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you. We appreciate you. Do you have someone over there?
I don't, but what I would like to say in the limited amount of time we have left is that, yes, put your hand up if you haven't had a chance to speak and you would like to speak. And if you have a personal story to tell that illustrates a point that has been made here tonight that you agreed with, we would love to hear that. We'd love to hear personal stories or stories of family and friends that are examples, as Amber just asked for, of what we've been hearing tonight. We do want to hear from as many people as possible.
Elizabeth, I just want to say if we can have just them line up, form a line over there. Great. I think that'll be a lot easier. Excellent. I don't want anybody to feel left out.
Right here.
And I apologize if I did make anybody feel left out or that I wasn't taking your question quicker than I should have, and I apologize. Did you want to say? Okay, perfect. Go ahead. Give us your first and last name, please.
My name is Janice Schoen. I'm a former library director straight from Long Island, New York, and I'm sure you can hear the accent. Okay. Well, I worked for 3 libraries, but the first one that I worked in was a African-American neighborhood, and I was asked to bring to the community the idea of making a new library for the community, because it used to be a white neighborhood, and there was skating rinks, there was swimming pools, there was a whole bunch of really good things that made people feel they were in their neighborhood. Fast forward, I come, and there was a school that was closed, probably because of racism. But when they were going to knock it down, we decided, let's try and make a library. So I got the community, I helped the community to invest in themselves. But that's not really where I want to stay. What I noticed is there was a lot of camaraderie between the police and the youth, that they would come and do basketball with them, and make sure that gangs didn't take hold. And I just want to ask, just for my own edification, is there any police officers here tonight?
Oh, right over there.
Okay, where? Hey, very good. Okay. Do you think it would be a good idea for the police officers to come into the community and really work with the students? No?
Well, everybody's entitled to their opinion. I've been in the department about 18 years, ma'am. I'm actually serve as the vice president of the Black Police Association here in Las Vegas. And we have done many things. I'm actually a product of 89106 as well, born and raised in a lot of these communities here. And we have a lot of events that we have that we try to, of course, bridge that gap. One of the reasons why I joined, because I always seen law enforcement in a negative aspect. So I said, I want to join and bring some positive interactions to law enforcement. So that's one of the major reasons why I became law enforcement. I also, we do have a DREAM program. It's called Discover, Redirect, Empower, Advocate, and Mentor. I'm also a founding member of that as well, but we mentor youth. It's so many things that we have going on. Each area command, it's 10 area commands, have a COP team. It's called Community Oriented Policing. We go out, we go to communities, we go to events, and we interact. One thing again, me being a product of this environment, is I always tell our people, that's from these communities. We have to get in the game. We have to go to First Tuesdays. We have to come out to these events. If we want to know what's going on, we have to be engaged. So I feel I'm a huge advocate, and I play a part in trying to make those things happen. So we do, to answer your question, we do have a lot of those things going on within our agency.
Positive,
Will you state,
positive thing to do.
Will you
Also,
state your name real quick? Because I don't think we got that. It's okay. I want to make sure we got it.
My name is Adrian Hunt.
Hi, Adrian. Janice.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there a Girls and Boys Club here in this community? Hello? Is there a Girls and Boys Club in this community?
Yeah, there's a Boys and Girls Club on Washington. But I did want to ask her a question. You shared a little bit of your background. Have you worked at a library in this area, or what's your connection to this area?
I bought a house here, and back in 2005, I bought a house, hoping to get a library job here, and I couldn't successfully get one, so I went back home. And I was a director in 3 different libraries, so I retired in 2019, and I came out. I knew I was going to live here when I was 25 years old, because I love the heat.
Okay, and how long have you been living in Las Vegas?
Permanently since 2019.
Okay, and you said you own a house in the area?
Not in this area, Summerlin.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you, we appreciate you. Thank you for coming out. All right, go ahead, Elizabeth, you're
Okay,
next.
great. State your name.
Thank you.
Go ahead and say your name.
Hi, I'm Danielle Goodwin, and I am a former educator. I taught for 8 years in the city. I've called this community home for about 6 years. I was very intentional about coming to this community to teach. My concern is I really, truly don't see the urgency that is needed in order to shift a lot of the issues that are currently going on in education. I think that the pandemic is an extremely convenient excuse at this point about why children are behind, why test scores are where they're at. And I can attest to the fact that kids in our communities have been 3 to 5 grades behind pre-pandemic. I don't even want to know what it is now. Again, I just don't really see the urgency. I think education has become an extreme buzzword. People get up and say education, and you know, things are just going to magically, you know, shift and change. And I'm just really not seeing what needs to be done.
What grades did you teach?
I taught 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. I started in special education resource, and then I moved to English.
Okay, so you know a little bit about literacy then. Do you want to talk about that specifically? What's your experience with reading and literacy at that grade level, and what should be being done that isn't being talked about?
Absolutely. I had 8th graders that could not read, 7th graders that could not read, 6th graders that could not read. Let's not talk about kids testing in 8th grade at 1st, 2nd grade level. And with bias, I wouldn't even put it that much higher than that. Reading is not being taught very well. And a lot of that has to do with the not prioritizing keeping skilled and quality educators in the classroom. I think that we are constantly talking about a teacher shortage. I was licensed for a year after I left the classroom and did not want to go back, okay? And that was because there's just so many things that are going on that are not even being talked about. We can talk about pay. I took the job. I knew that I was, doing a service in a sense. Pay is definitely urgent, but I would say top 5, not number 1. Right?
Name off the other 4.
Huh?
What are the priorities? I mean, you're on a roll, so what are the other 4?
For me, it was about really respecting what I did. I went to school. I constantly trained, constantly had to further my education in what I did, and constantly being treated like I didn't know what I was doing.
Treated by whom?
Administrators, leadership, that kind of thing. Just really constantly being micromanaged. I was in the classroom with those kids every single day, so I knew what they needed. And when I was always being told, well, this is what needs to be done. And then I would be like, well, no, this is what I'm seeing. And that constantly being ignored, right? So if I can't do what I need to do for the kids, it's not really putting me in a good position to move the needle on achievement.
All right, thank you for your comments. We've got, some folks lined up back here.
We have a line forming here, but Nyoka and Amber, did you want to add anything?
I think that was a well-rounded thought. Thanks for sharing that. I did want to know, maybe you can speak to how the media is covering education. Maybe you have some feedback on that, because you said it's not talked about, the things that you mentioned.
Yes, I think there's been a focus on certain issues in education. Like I said, pay is definitely a huge concern. Do not get me wrong, because they probably would have had to double my check in order for it to be worth it to do what I was doing, okay? Because I took it very seriously. I was very passionate about it. So I think that there's just certain areas that they're focusing on. I think it's, like I said, a very convenient excuse to bring up the pandemic when it comes to student achievement and where students are testing, but that was an issue pre-pandemic.
Okay, and
they didn't have an excuse.
Where do you get your news from when you're following education, if you don't mind sharing?
I try to access a variety of mediums. Typical news, newspaper, review journal, also certain social media outlets as well.
Thank you.
All right, we have another question over here. Go ahead, give us your first and last name, please. I'll hold the microphone.
Okay, sure. My name is Tiffany May Noel, fourth generation here of Las Vegas native. I am probably one of the younger ones. I will say that I'm 32 years old. So, grew up in this area. I was in a really bad car wreck, so I had to write things down so that I remember them and then I don't forget what I needed to say. So just to place perspective, so many people in this room represent more than one thing. So you may see a lack of people here, but I hold 3 hats by myself, and I know other people do the same. A lot of concerns I do have for our community in Las Vegas as a whole, but a lot of things were mentioned and I wanted to talk about those things. So redlining is something that was brought up, is directly associated with the social determinants of health, which is healthcare access and quality, education access and quality, social and community context, economic stability, and neighborhood and built environment, all things that we all talked about, but kind of breezed over just a little bit. But we need to think about what social determinants of health really are speaking to us. When you mention financial impact, for every $100 in a white household, there's $5 in a black one. So that's one of the issues that we see. And we also talk about the physical impacts of redlining. The physical redlining was laying down a highway or a street that divided communities, which we see as well, which allowed for poor infrastructure that led to underinvestments like we see here in the historic West Side, which allows for food deserts and food gutters like we see. We don't have Trader Joe's, we don't have Whole Foods, we don't have those places, but thanks to Mario, he was able to increase those investments, but we still need more. So when we talk about investments, so projects such as Jackson Avenue costed $6.2 million. That allows for pedestrians, bicyclists, and people with special abilities and vehicles to utilize the roadways in the safest way. These areas aren't granted that like other areas are. And you ask why it costs so much, and whereas it's literally a fraction of cost of new builds. Well, you have to think about the lack of investment in infrastructure. We weren't given power, water, sewer, and other adequate needs in this community. So it's gonna cost more to invest into this community. And with that being said, we have to lean into what the law is in federal law, the bipartisan infrastructure law, the Justice 40 initiatives that intentionally acknowledges the historic systemic racism that has crippled Black communities, and realize that our communities deserve equality and equity in 2023. That's all I have to say.
Thank you so much. Any follow-up questions?
I think that was a well-rounded statement. Thank you for that.
Yeah, and you brought something that's very important. That was, we had the honor of being at the opening of Mario's West Side Market, a beautiful event, the community to see them out there. So what else needs to be done? So we do it, so it's not being called a food desert.
Same thing that everyone already mentioned, investment into this community. Having access, business licensing is a problem. Land rights is a problem. Adequate funding is a problem. When we think about all of the historic issues, we have to realize that even Black people psychologically have been duped into believing they can't do something. And we have to reverse that even through our school systems. But we're being taught that things like racism don't exist. So listening to us and putting people in position to be able to own things that benefit our communities would help with the food desert and stop giving us fast foods that are not good for us and poison.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you so much.
Okay,
right, go ahead. Come on over.
Yep, keep lining up. As long as we have time, we will keep going. So, sir, state your name and how long you've been living in the community, if you indeed do.
All right, my name is Yared Adata, and I haven't been living in 89106, but I stay in the Little Ethiopia district. But one of my issues that I want to raise as a community member would have to be the youth and how they've been impacted, and how our Black youth particularly are the most referred to in the juvenile justice. And so with that also being said, there's an issue where the school district feels that they need to increase the CCSD police budget by millions, and then we still dealing with the issues of illiteracy, the lack of aid for our teachers to be able to get through the school year without going into their own personal budgets. And then instead of more of like what blows my mind is that you can will increase the budget of police, school police, to be there with children, and this is supposed to be an arena to be able to learn and thrive. But then how can one be able to come in with that type of mentality when you already have this what can I say, centuries rooted in police with slave patrols and things of that sort. So all of this comes to mind, but then you won't let someone that the youth who can relate to, who has been in the streets or who has been walking through a former life to come on campus and to be able to mentor these youth. If you got a felony, you can't even come and even go to like a field trip with your child. So I think if we really want to be able to find some solutions to what I have an issue with in the community is, which the youth are in youth incarceration, I think that that would be an area of solution that we should study.
Okay, and you touch on something that I've heard before from nonprofit organizations that work with the youth, is that they have a difficult time partnering with CCSD to carry out some of these mentorship opportunities. Can you tell me a little bit more about how you went about, trying to get on campus, or what's been some of the plans or strategies around that?
Yeah, I only smile because we had to do some things to where I don't know. Yeah, we had to do some things, but had it ever get flagged or anything like that, then one would be accountable, and I don't know what the consequences would be like for that. But I guess it'd be probably like a case by case situation. But I think that there needs to be an addressing of the need to be able to increase the school police budget, and then we still having issues with other things that have pressing demand.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you, sir.
All right, give us your first and last name.
Cool. So I'm Alex Neal. Really quickly to your question about involvement with CCSD, if you go top down, it's very difficult, but if you go directly to the schools, usually if you can create a partnership with like a principal, they're more willing to like bring you in, and that's their choice. But that's a school to school basis. So that's just side note to what I was gonna say. So earlier, Tiffany mentioned my bread and butter, which is so awesome, was the social determinants of health. And actually what I wanted to say does not get reported on enough, definitely does not have enough of that investment, is the public health infrastructure in Nevada, period, but especially in Southern Nevada and in Clark County. So public health is so interesting because it's so complex and it's so complicated. We all use it all the time. With that being said, there's specifically I wanted to talk about food deserts, cultural competency, heat vulnerability, and health equity, all of those. So I'm going to go back forward. Health equity, okay, so that one's difficult. Not difficult, but I'm trying not to ramble too much. Okay, so health equity in Southern Nevada or in Nevada, period, is very difficult because people have a lack of ability to afford medical insurance, or they have medical insurance, maybe they have Medicaid. Medicaid is pretty comprehensive in a way, but at the same time, a lot of times people can't make it into the doctor's office or into see providers. They don't usually maintain primary care providers, which makes it difficult when the recommendation is go talk to your primary care provider. When you're in the area that's usually an area with high heat vulnerability and also likely is a food desert, like the zip codes that are already mentioned or the one that we're currently in, there's usually a lack of close medical care assistance or anything like that within a certain budget range, especially when you take into account certain things like, so there's one FQHC really close to here, that's Nevada Health Centers, right? And then you have VMSN, which is not a FQHC because they serve an undocumented population and they can't take federal funds if they serve undocumented, which means they have to fundraise. And sometimes that funding, you always want to just hope that they have enough to be able to take care of the people in their neighborhood, which makes it interesting, and it's also an equity conversation. And then even if you leave the side and go over and you cross the freeway and you're now on the east side, they also have not a lot of healthcare resources. A lot of funding. It's multi-generational households most often, which then brings us to the heat vulnerability, which concrete, street, all this wonderful things, they're awesome. I personally am not an outdoorsy person. I don't want to travel on rocks and dirt. However, what it also does with the lack of trees, a lack of plants, a lack of ability to absorb things that would absorb water, moisture, heat, and maintenance is that it increases your heat vulnerability, which means that what bounces off the sun comes back. And so in 117 degrees, that's not quite nice. Or in October, that has a day that's 92. That's not also nice. And then the bus stops are spaced out. There's not a lot of Okay, so in legislation, it's called a walkability audit, but it's really an interdisciplinary movability audit, meaning how effectively can anyone, whether you walk or in a wheelchair or whatever the case, can move from place to place, go into a business or out of a business. Are the sidewalks ADA accessible? Are they technically ADA accessible, but then when you're really there with the wheelchair, you're like, this is terrible, or whatever the cases may be, right? So I just wanted to bring that up as a topic that I think you guys should also explore, and on an elected official front, investment into cultural competency. I personally believe that nobody has enough cultural competency training or cultural humility training, but especially for anyone that is coming from a public service background or a governmental interaction, they should be required to go through cultural competency and cultural humility training. They should be required to follow through with the bare minimum of what is laid in statute for behavioral and mental health providers. They are not required to do so unless their bosses or someone on the higher level has decided that they should do so. Putting that out there, just saying. Just leaving that. Okay. So, and then the very last thing, which food desert. Okay. That is very complicated. That's very complicated. I'm very happy that we have a new grocery store that just opened up on this side. I do want to point out, because I don't know if you guys talked about this. I don't watch the local news as much as I should. I'm going to clarify this. But But with things like the Kroger-Albertson merger and all these other conversations that I don't think made it out into communities of need, were most likely their closest, like if you go on the east side, one of the only grocery stores is a Smith's, which is a Kroger subsidiary, right? And then there's the potential that that might close, leaving a whole bunch of people without food, but then it's not communicated or it's not discussed. And I know the Attorney General's office did listening sessions. I attended one. There were like 6 people in the room. So, like, it makes it quite difficult when you have that. So there's investment, but then there's also investment in communication, because I think people will come out and talk about why they need these things. In addition to that, I think that often these places are looked at as, well, we can't do it because it's too hot, we can't grow it, we can't bus it in, we can't transport it in, it's et cetera. So try to be really quick with it, because I can talk a very long time. So
You are wonderful. I do need to ask, you live in this community?
Yeah. Yes, I do.
The Obodo Collective. Are you familiar with that organization? What do you think about what they're doing, bringing in this urban farm to this area?
No, I think Obodo Collective is great. I think it's an awesome initiative. I think that it cannot be the only one, and it is not large enough to sustain what people will hope it will sustain. And that's a very long, drawn-out conversation and all these different things. My bachelor's is in an agricultural field, so.
Well, we thank you for what you're doing. Thank you so much. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Okay, you're up, sir. Your name and how long you have lived in this community, and what do you want to talk about?
Yeah, my name is Chandler Cooks. I was born and raised in this community. I'm 29 years old. I wanted to mention one thing Mr. Collins said earlier was the gift of exposure. That really hit home for me, because we need that as a younger generation, because we're going through a different way of life than you all did coming here in historic West Side. My father, my grandmother, my uncles, aunts, they were able to work a single job, purchase a home, raise their family, put money aside to send their children to school. I was a byproduct of that upcoming. But now, here I am, out of school, nearly $100,000 in student loan debt. I can't afford to purchase a home. I can hardly afford to maintain a home that will one day be inherited to me. Look at that as generational wealth. My grandmother is a property owner on Jackson Street. Because of the redlining that she endured, there was no investment into the property. And now that I'm a property manager for her, and that property will come to me, still, I'm in debt myself, and how will I be able to maintain both of these things, So the trickle down, the fallout effect from the redlining, is affecting the next generation. It's making those opportunities far less reachable. The freedom has been cut off. So I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you for that. Redlining is obviously the topic of the conversation tonight. Thank you for sharing that personal story. Maybe you can speak to how the media could cover it better, or is it being spoken about enough?
No, it's absolutely not being spoken about at all. We got the highest rent. Our rent is going, oh my God, like the average home price is nearly $500,000. I could afford a $2,000-3,000 emergency if it happened to me. So how could I afford that? We hear about it, but what's the solutions to it? I think there needs to be something, grants. Well, and there was something that happened today at the City Hall. There was an EPA grant that was approved for business owners on the Jackson Street. But what I later learned was that funding isn't accessible to the business owners. It's going to some other entities that will assist those business owners, but this is the money going straight to them. Even the grants that's out right now for these business owners, these are matching funds, right? What money do I have to match a grant? So because of all this disinvestment, I think there just needs to be true investment, right? Without all the red tape and so.
Can I ask where you went to school?
Yeah, so I walked to Matt Kelly. Because of No Child Left Behind, I walked to Charles I. West, and I was bused to Ralph Cadwallader in Centennial Hills. But For high school, I ended up moving to a small town called Tallulah, Louisiana. Went to McCall, where, you know, education, when we speak about that, I went to McCall High School in Tallulah, Louisiana, 9th grade. My peers could not read. We were learning verbs. We were learning nouns. We didn't read our first chapter book till my senior year in high school. I was blessed enough to, my parents sent me back to Las Vegas to live with my uncle, and I went to Silverado my sophomore years, and that education is what rolled me through college. So, you know, the education system, and that's, the media needs to speak on that as well. Go into the classroom, speak to the families, like hear those true stories. Don't ask the institutions, because, you know, you're not going to get the truth.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. I went to Grambling State University. Yeah, I studied computer information systems, criminal law, political science. I went to UNLV, studied cybersecurity, and I attended Johns Hopkins University and studied data science.
All right.
Thank you very much.
All right, this young man who's been very patient, give us your first and last name.
Thank you. My name's Nathaniel Phillips. I was born and raised in Las Vegas in the historic Twin Lakes neighborhood by my grandmother. I hate giving credentials, but I graduated from one of our top schools in Nevada, the Las Vegas Academy. I'm a proud UNLV rebel. I have been a teacher in the Clark County School District. I've been a community health worker helping address our child care crisis. I've interned for our first representative of color, Stephen Horsford, his first Black Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. And I've worked in community organizing and political advocacy and community empowerment for damn near 12 years now. And I know many of the faces in this room, and I'm sorry if some of us don't like the things that I have to say, but as a community member, my voice also matters, and especially if we're coming to the heart of the West Side. I did not grow up in West Side proper. I hope down by Lorenzi Park, which is now Nipsey Hussle Park. It's a little ways down, but it is very near and dear to me as an organizer and as a Black organizer. And I think we have to tell the truth. We should always tell the truth. And there have been some framing that we've heard this evening that do not lead us closer to the truth and actually get us away from it. And one of those is the notion, someone said it in the audience before I came up here, the notion of, are we dealing with racism? Of course. The fact that we are even asking that is an example of the framing that we have to deal with on our journey for justice and liberation. And to put it very bluntly, that is a white framing. Black people do not sit around and ask, is racism a factor? Is racism holding down? Because we've been here for over almost over 400 years now. It's baked into the American DNA. So I'll just start there as one harmful frame. But it's also not surprising that such a query would come in a conversation hosted by a political publication. I'm going to shoot myself in the foot here. I'm happy to have been published by it, but has been historically criticized for underreporting or inaccurately reporting on issues impacting BIPOC, and I actually mean Black communities. And that's not just criminal justice. So thanks so much to one of the journalists on Nayoka, thank you, on the stage now.
I didn't ask that question, but continue.
No, of course not, of course, and she wouldn't. But we're glad you're there, and we're so thankful for your coverage and hope that it continues and grows, and there will be more voices. I will be very concise. 2020, we saw the largest social movement in American history. We all decolonized, thank you for holding this, we all decolonized our bookshelves. We all started having kitchen table conversations about structural racism, and here we are in 2023 going in reverse. We've actually gone back in certain regards. So I just want to encourage everyone to dust those books off that you might have skipped over or you didn't read, and recognize that we still have all of the things that activists in the social movement on the ground pointed out, all the layers that led to George Floyd's death, anti-Blackness, hatred of Black and poor people. Those are very much with us, and they're actually here in this room, and in my last point, I'll get to that. To the politicians, I work in this field. I've helped to get people elected. I support Black folks. I support Black electeds. I support Black women. it's even more important that our electeds tell us the truth. In Nevada, in the legislature, we are overrepresented, actually, by black legislators. We might, if we want to say we have disproportionate power. So then why is it that our misery as black folks is still higher, is still disproportionate than some other communities in our valley? Make that make sense. Maybe it's because we don't tell the truth. And there comes a time when we have to look one another in the eye and recognize that we get in our own way by not holding our own elected officials accountable. And sometimes when those people are our friends or our frat brothers or sisters, that is not our job to be friends with elected officials. Our job is to seek justice and to seek liberation for our communities. And the last thing I'll say is about racism as according to the Nevada legislature, this happened during the special session in 2020, and according to Clark County, racism is a public health issue. So how is it that racism is a public health issue, but yet Clark County just this year, along with the city of Las Vegas, decided to grant, budget with our tax dollars, nearly $1 billion, $800 million for the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department and the Clark County Detention Center. One of the largest drivers of anti-black death and racism and public health is policing. The American Public Health Association has come out clearly calling for decriminalizing, for reducing police presence, for reducing interactions between police and the communities they serve, because it actually doesn't make us safer. Locking people up, increasing our prison population. We have 2.3 million people locked up in prison, the same amount that are currently being bombed in Gaza right now, which is a striking figure. That doesn't make us safer. So to say things like, we wouldn't even go into a white community and ask, well, are the police around here? Are the police going to play basketball with the kids? That is racist. By not calling out how increased police presence in the West Side contributes to racism and over-policing, when the police decide to serve warrants for years ago for not driving with the proper registration, but they wouldn't go to Summerlin and serve those same warrants to people who could actually afford them, that is perpetuating racism, and the people that you vote for uphold that. So I cannot, that's basically it, but I cannot stand here and have a conversation about why we don't have more police in our communities or talk about how the West Las Vegas is the safest community, when if you look at the map, it clearly says the Prison Policy Institute and the article written by the ACLU, not crazy people, not radicals like Nathaniel, it clearly shows the mass incarceration, the geography of mass incarceration flows directly through West Las Vegas into the center urban core and into East Las Vegas. Who lives there? Black people, brown people, and poor people. So it's preposterous to say that police are keeping us safe. They're removing us from our communities and pumping us into prison. So that's, I'm also with the Mass Liberation Project. I'm on the board, so I have to push back against nonsense and really, it's almost psychological manipulation when it comes from black faces and black electeds telling us that we need police to be safer. It is not documented by any empirical evidence. In fact, it all says the contrary. So if you want to be anti-racist and support black folks, get that myth out of your head, do some research, and actually take a stand for public health, for food, for housing, for thriving schools, for parks that we can go out and enjoy ourselves in, not the police. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. We are wrapping up. It is 7:58. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming, for sharing your perspective. We really appreciate it.
Also, I want to just share that the Nevada Independent has an app. Go ahead and download that. You will have a newspaper or an article daily from our organization. Also, I want to remind you of some important dates. February 6th is Nevada's primary election, and November 7th is the presidential election. These community listening sessions will continue to happen. We hope to see you all at our next one, and I guess good night.
Have a good evening. Thank you.